Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm joined with A Sola, a first-time collaborator, but a long-time communicator. I don't know, someone I've been communicating with online, and I've even recommended his channel, and I still do, of course. Does animation, 2D animation is very close to my heart, and all of his videos have a animation element that I very much respect and enjoy. But today we're talking about my most recent video, where I mentioned you, A Sola. Your video wasn't that recent. I was responding to it more as a conversation that we had. But anyway, you made a video a few months ago on authority, and we had a few emails about it. And I have been meaning to make a video about it, so I finally did, using your emails, using your video as a kind of jumping off point, and I thought we could elaborate on it a little bit more in a live stream. So thank you very much for coming on. Welcome.
Yeah,
it's great to finally talk to you.
Yeah, actually to meet you as well. It's very and it's very nice to be here, by the way. And yeah, I guess it's just because of the to clarify basically my position and the what I was positing in not just that video but the entire series, because it's part of a series of 8 episodes, and also because of the manner or the what you how you represented the idea in the video. So basically, what I mean by when talking about indoctrination, I'll try to put this in very simple terms, like the most basic terms that we can that everybody can basically understand. That you have on one side a people who are, or people or things that are in a position of not authority, but have information or ideas or instructions, and to teach people. All right. So what I refer to them as the authority. So that's one side. Then on the other side, you obviously have the adherents, the followers, and the ones who get the information, right? And the only thing that qualifies that process of teaching the adherents the information or whatever. And by the way, when I say authority, it doesn't necessarily mean authority in other senses. It just means that is something that they reference to for ideas or information or whatever. So you can say, oh, he's an authority in physics, or he's a,
Yeah. Could you also say expert, kind of analogous in
expert as well? Yeah, people who are in a position, exactly. So it would be like governments, experts, scientists, sacred texts. I mentioned that a lot in my series. Sacred texts, like the Bible, the Quran. It could even be celebrities. Like a person, just because they say it or they're admired by a lot of people, whether they have no expertise or not. They can be an authority to people on these such things like morals and information. Information is like whether it's true or false. Morals would be if it's good or bad. Instructions is if you should follow it or not. All right. So then now, what makes it qualify as indoctrination is when the process between the teaching of the acceptance of the information or rejection, that's also a thing that is very important, because it's going to come back later in this conversation, is that it's not just the acceptance of the information, it's also the rejection. So if the authority teaches the adherent something, but there is no critical thinking, like in other words, there is no questioning, no examination of the things. We're following it because we are solely on the basis that we are told by, or not just told by the authority, but also because it's coming from the authority. So for example, well, Einstein said it, so it must be true. Or, this celebrity says it, so it must be good, things like that. And we'll get to the things like, because you mentioned some very good points, but we'll get to the counter arguments for that. But then it's like, yeah, if it's accepted solely on that basis, it counts as indoctrination. I actually checked up a few definitions for indoctrination, where it says that it's the teaching of things uncritically, so without critical thinking involved, so no questioning.
Yeah.
And and basically that was it. Now, what happened was in the video, the thing is that it was kind of presented as because I remember you said that I inserted that it's that people should just trust their own understanding and their skills to derive truth, and rather than listening to the authorities. Now that is actually, it has a lot to do with my most recent video where I addressed this exact topic, where it's not that at all. That was not at all what I'm positing, not even in our conversation or in the series.
Yeah.
What
Well,
I
maybe
did
it's
posit
better.
out.
It might be a good time to just explain what I was doing in my video. I actually got a lot of pushback from my viewers, which I always enjoy. When it's polite and all of that, because I think critical thinking and rationality is in the modern world, and especially on YouTube, it's presented as an unalloyed benefit, that it's just absolutely the way to go, and there's nothing wrong with it. And I have a lot of sympathy for that belief, and that's how I kind of even got started on YouTube myself. And it's only very recently that I've started to see that there is a limit to that. So I only wanted to highlight just a few kind of exceptions to what I consider to be the general rule that just because an authority figure says something, it doesn't mean you should believe it or do what they say. Which is, it's kind of, to everyone who might be watching my videos, that's kind of obvious that authority should be challenged, that they should be, that you should think critically. That's what I understand to be well understood by everyone watching, and I'm only positing a few exceptions to that, or a few reasons why that might not always be a good thing. So anyway, please continue.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly why I was happy to have this conversation, because it's actually I think the only unfortunate thing is that I have not finished the series, because some of the points are actually things that I will be addressing in the series, and you're actually kind of helping out in a sense, because but then so that's the indoctrination process. But then now when it comes to how can I? Oh yeah, but then now there are limitations, because critical thinking, right? The series is not on critical thinking; it's on indoctrination and how it can be avoided. Because the thing about the authority is that there is no guarantee that what they say is true or untrue, or what they say is good or bad. It's a very neutral position to where that we have to start with. So we cannot start with the position that, well, everything that they're going to say is good, because that is literally what leads to indoctrination. So it's to say that since there's no guarantee for that, the only way that we can, well, the best way, and I also discussed that, but the best way that we can kind of at least come closer to realizing if it's closer to truth, or if it's a better option, is by questioning and deliberating and examining and so on and so forth. However, critical thinking does have, like you said, its limitations, and it also has its presuppositions. The first one that you actually mentioned in our discussion was the presupposition that the person, that the follower, the adherent, is in a position to actually understand what is being said, and in a position to kind of reason about it. So, for example, you kind of, and that's the thing, there are some people, well, some cases of beings that are not in such a position. Now, you gave the example of a baby, of course, but then there are other cases. There are, for example, people with serious mental disabilities. There are also, for example, animals, and of course, babies. We cannot communicate for example, the way we're communicating now, ideas with nuances and all that stuff, we cannot communicate in that exact manner to such people. For example, we can tell kind of what's good for them and all that, but that's not the point. The point is that there is another way of doing anything. So, for example, I saw a comment in your video that was like, talking about the peas, and it's like, yeah, even if you need to take the child to the dentist, they may not understand, and they may go kicking and screaming and resisting and everything, but it's because you're in that position to kind of know better. And I mean, in most cases, people do know better, but in other cases, of course, they don't. But that's not really the point. The point is that such people are not in a position to understand. The other limitation is that is urgency. And I was actually speaking with my brother about this recently. It came from also a comment actually from your that someone left on your video that said that if without following orders, the army wouldn't function. And that is a very good point, because the thing is that in cases of I would say urgency, or cases where the situation is dire and there is no possibility to actually properly explain the reasons as to why you should perhaps follow or believe something, of course, this has its limitations. So, for example, if I speak to a person who only understands Chinese, trying to tell him that, oh, there's a train behind you, you should get out the way, speaking in English is not going to help. And even if I do that, obviously, I'll have to communicate it in a different way. The same thing with the army, for example. That's why we have hierarchies there, because there are people that are deliberating and figuring out, oh, this is the best course of action to take and all that stuff.
Did you ever see that, The Last Jedi? Have you seen that film?
If I have to be honest, I've never watched a Star Wars movie before.
Okay, that's don't watch that one. But there's a part in it, well, the whole film actually, it's based around this woman who assumes charge after, I think, the last commander steps down or leaves or dies or something. She's a new character. She's played by Laura Dern, who you might have seen in Jurassic Park. And anyway, so she's this like purple-haired feminist woman, and she wears like a sequin dress, and she has a plan for how they're going to evade the enemy. And one of the main characters, Poe Dameron, kind of like my name, he goes, I think that plan is stupid, and I think you're wrong. And she goes, get out of here. This isn't. I'm in charge. You're not supposed to be questioning me. And he goes off on, like, the entire movie is based on his plan, or like half of the movie, based on his plan to save the ship. Like, because her plan's not going to work. So he has to save it. And then in the end, you find out what her plan actually was. She could have just told him, but she doesn't, because she's in charge. So she just expects him to listen. And it's just a very frustrating experience, because everyone watching goes like, why didn't you just tell him what the plan was? Because he's just he's wasted his time. He's wasted, like, all these people could have died. And also he just, like, us, the viewer, we've wasted our time because his plan was stupid and her plan. Anyway, it just reminds me of that.
No, it's actually a good point, because it's a plot device that many people use to kind of, get the story going, where, for example, they could have just easily said something like, no, don't, we could easily go through this course of action, but then they take another one just to get the movie going, really. Yeah. But that's actually the point, with even with the army, right, and the military, that they are, and not just the army or the military, but even scientists and people who are in a position to kind of know better. They may know better and everything, but that's why I gave you the example in our discussion about the difference between fascist societies and societies such as, the free world, basically, where in this situation, for example, with COVID and all that, when they, for example, here in South Africa, made the rule that we have to wear masks, even though it's not necessarily a law, but there's debate on that.
Be careful about what you say, because there are some things that will get this stream.
Oh yeah, I was thinking about that. Let me say that.
Try to talk in generalities if possible.
Yeah, all right, cool, no problem. So basically, like, they explained the reasons why we should wear masks. All right, that's all that's what they did. While as in the difference would be that in a place like, for example, North Korea or whatever, if they tell you to do something, they don't have to give you a reason why, and they won't, and maybe they won't even do that. And that difference is very crucial, because if ever, in the case, for example, with the mask, I'm not going to get into it, but it may be a good thing, all right? If you disagree, it's another thing. Yeah. But then it may be good. But then in the cases where it's not good, and I gave the example of, for example, Nazi Germany, then how can we always tell? And the thing is that with deliberation, examination, and questioning of ideas, at least on some level, whether it's not on the level of the layman, it is kind of needed to kind of at least deliberate on, question on what may be better and what may be worse. And that was basically the thing. So with the army, for example, it's a matter of urgency. You have people on the top, but then the people at the bottom kind of need to follow orders regardless of whether they understand it or not. If they tell them we're moving up north and everything, and there have been cases where some generals made terrible decisions, especially during World War I, where they decide to go through a completely complicated route, Most of them died of frostbite and starvation. It was in the Ottoman Empire. I forgot the name of the general, but terrible decisions. But the fact is that the people on the layman are taught to follow orders, all right? They have to follow orders because of the urgency of the situation. So obviously, critical thinking has its limitations there because you can't always, yeah. And then the third one, which was something I think you or someone else mentioned, was oh yeah, it was you. So it was basically the idea of people might rebel. All right. So like for example, teenagers, they don't have experience of the parents, but then or rather the E. coli example. So for example, some people will eat from the ground, all right, and even if they're told not to, even if they're explained the reasons as to, hey, if you eat from the ground, you can get diseases.
Yeah, so
They could
children
eat
do
from
this a lot. Well, toddlers, they like to put things in their mouths, and they don't have any categories for like things to put in mouth, things not to put in mouth, unless it tastes really, really bad. Everything goes in the mouth. Like it's the objects, rocks, dirt, grass, flowers. It doesn't matter. Like they'll try anything. And so my example was that I have to tell my daughter, like, just don't, like, drop that, let go of it. It's not going in your mouth. And I often say, the explanation I give is it's dirty. That's the blanket reason. So I can't explain E. coli or parasites, the things that you can pick up from things from the ground, but just saying it's dirty. Like dirty things don't go in the mouth. You put food in the mouth, and so children like to play this why game where you go, it's dirty. Why? That's not really an explanation for a child. You go like they might understand this category of what dirty is, but they don't actually understand why that is different from clean. It doesn't actually help their understanding. It just helps them obey the rule a bit better, perhaps. And the interesting thing is that children have this. They do obey these arbitrary rules up to a certain age. You can train them, just like you can train a dog or any kind of animal to have like a set of rules. This is okay. This is not okay. It's important for survival that children know to obey the rules because even if they don't understand them. And I think it's one of those kind of circuits, one of those behaviors that people maintain into adulthood.
And that's the thing, right? As we get older, you actually start to see that the curriculum, in again, free countries, starts to also change to encourage more critical thinking rather than following authority. So one analogy would be, especially that you're an engineer, you would know this, that when you're doing mathematics or mathematics tests, the answer is not as important as the way you got to the answer. So for example, you have all the working out. Sometimes you can even have your working out and you made a mistake somewhere along the lines, but then you still fix it or you find a way to get it. And then in the end, you still get the right answer, even if you made a mistake. And that's the thing about it. Understanding it is kind of, it's very important. The expression, teach a man to fish, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man a fish. That's the thing, because the thinking patterns, at least, will be detrimental if they do it simply because, either for the wrong reasons anyway. Other people are doing it. Oh no, this person said so, or we should just follow. Of course, like I said, the limitations, for example, on the children, urgency and whatever, like a child is about to run into the street and all that, you're not going to take the time to explain that if you get hit by a car, you're going to, get splattered to pieces. So the thing is, and you wouldn't really want to also get that graphic with a child either. So there's that. But then, but I suppose did I mention the third one? Oh yeah. So the whole E. coli, for example, it cannot be avoided either way. If people are going to, for example, reject the authority for the wrong reasons, or for example, they're going to rebel, which does happen, and that's literally what I was discussing in the last, in my most recent video, with conspiracy theories. The thing is that they will say, for example, oh no, E. coli is an arbitrary thing, it's not real or whatever, And then they'll come up with that, and well, it can't be avoided because you can, and that's actually also where the whole critical thinking angle or giving reasons thing doesn't always work, because you can, for example, the all sorts of regimes, Maoists and Stalinists and all that, and communism, they all did give reasons as to why, oh, it will work. No, if we all get together, if we kind of, if the government kind of works for the people instead of, the other way around, stuff, things like that. They gave their reasons, but the conclusions weren't always that great. So sometimes I guess we do make mistakes. Critical thinking doesn't necessarily doesn't have a guarantee that it will always lead to the best solutions, but it is at least a way for us to decide, or at least have a better understanding to get there. And the reason why indoctrination is a problem is because if we're fixed only on listening to certain things because it was said so, then there is none of that. There's no questioning. There's no anything, and we can do good things, like saving people from all sorts of things because of order. Or one more very practical example is like, I don't know if in your cities you have that, but in some towns, especially war towns, you'll have sirens, a place where if a siren blows, everybody needs to unite in a town square or something like that. Obviously, for some people may not understand it, but when you hear that siren, they have explained at least that whatever the reason may be, you need to do it. It's for your own safety, but even if it's not, you need to kind of do it. It's also another case of urgency. And sometimes the reasons may be good, sometimes the reasons may be bad. And what if they're leading us there to, I don't know, burn us alive? We don't know. Critical thinking cannot solve that, but it can at least lead us closer to the reality of things,
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that. And I think, I mean, if you'd like to talk about it some more, I did have some more points that I didn't get around to bringing up in the video, such as what we discussed about E. coli in children, and I think there's one point that I perhaps disagree with you, or what you were saying just now about what you would call people who are children, minors, who are legally not allowed to make decisions for themselves because we believe them not to have the decision-making capabilities of adults, and that also goes for the the clinically. I can't even think of what the the infirm, people who are not. They need a legal guardian even if they're of adult age, and I think you bring up it's interesting that you bring up the mask issue. I won't mention the very bad virus name just in case, but we all know what we're talking about. And I think that that viruses and the transmission of illness and the various techniques that the various governments are using, especially the big the V word, the jabby pointy thing that you absolutely cannot talk about on YouTube. That's very badly understood. The way that it works, it's so poorly understood. They try to explain it. The government, the health secretary in our country, the people who make the rules, they have a justification for the rules. But I think those justifications are very poorly understood by people. And you see people making these memes and things on the internet. I don't know if you know, in England, for a while, we had a rule about going to the pub. So I don't know how familiar you are with English culture, but for anyone watching who's not native to England, who's never visited a pub, I expect there's a similar concept in most countries where it's a place where you can go to drink, or a lot of pubs also sell food, though, is the thing. Most pubs you can buy a meal there. So for a while in England, you could go to a pub, you could sit down with some people, either from your household or not from your household. The rules kind of varied a lot. You could go there for food, but you could not go there just to drink. And people made fun of this rule, going like, oh, you think the virus cares whether you're having a meal or whether you're having a drink? Like, come on, that's so stupid. When the actual reasons behind that rule were, like fairly nuanced. I won't go into it now because it's just a waste of time. But the point is that, like, pretty much no one seem to understand why you could go to eat, but you couldn't go to drink. And it doesn't matter, right? Because the government says you can't do it. The pubs have to enforce the law, or they can lose their license. They have to close or whatever. Even if they don't understand the rules, the pubs are enforcing the rules because they could get in trouble for not enforcing the rules. And I'm not saying whether that was good or bad. You know, that you can watch my other videos on lockdowns and the virus and all that. But the point is that even legal adults who are able legally to make decisions for themselves, something that like very complicated, like the transmission of a virus amongst the population, very, very poorly understood. I'm not saying I understand it even. I'm not trying to pretend to be an expert on this, but it is a case where you have to make a simple rule of thumb, right? If you're going to the supermarket, you have to wear a mask. But if you're going to work, you don't have to wear. Work where you might be talking to someone, a meter away from you. Supermarket, you generally don't actually talk to people. But you still have to wear a mask. And it's like these rules that seem kind of arbitrary, and they literally are arbitrary in the sense that there is an arbiter saying you must do it in this sense, but not in this sense. There is reasons for these. They actually do have a reason for enforcing these rules in this way. They want the rules to be as simple as possible so that people know how to follow them, and so they don't make stupid memes about it on the internet. They're not making them pointlessly complicated. They have their reasons. And the thing is that I think most people on most matters are essentially children in the sense of how well they understand the world. They really don't understand a lot of what they're being told. A lot of the really important things for staying alive, they don't really understand that well, but they know it well enough because an authority has told them. They understand it well enough to get by, just about.
Actually, I remember that you made that point, and unfortunately, we couldn't go into much detail with it online because you obviously didn't have time for it. But then I actually thought about that, and it was a good point. What I think about that, right, is that it still kind of applies the same way. Because, for example, children, the example I gave with the children and the dentist, right? It now just comes down to power and consequences. Oh, that's funny because that's actually the thing that I'm working on for the next part of my series. But anyway, look out for that. But basically, it's the same concept wherein if you're going to have to take the child kicking and screaming because they don't understand why they're going to the dentist, but they just know that they hate it and they're going to experience a whole lot of pain. And that's when it comes down to the level of power and reward and punishment. If to keep order, right? We really do live in a world where the strongest are, the ones that have to be in power. If, for example, right now, we probably would have been overtaken by a whole lot of things if people didn't have nuclear weapons to defend themselves, for example. So the thing is that the power wins out at the end of the day. In the same case with the pubs and the people that wouldn't follow and everything, at the end, I would say that in those cases, indoctrination is still not really the answer, because even if you tell them, or rather, I would say, because I said so is not the answer. Because if it's like, well, the government says so and everything, and you have to do it, it can temporarily help and everything until somebody eventually starts a rebellion and then everything goes out of whack, which does happen. But the other thing is also because they kind of know that there are consequences, and they kind of have to weigh am I really going to break the rules just for a drink and then end up in prison? Some will, and some have, especially here. They will. Yeah. But then it doesn't really, both ways it doesn't help. So you're right. The critical thinking doesn't help there with the thing, because they cannot always convey messages to the people, just like with children. But then even if so it will have to turn into a case of do it because we said so, because now you don't understand, but
because it's a punishment involved. Yeah,
exactly. So there has to be some consequence anyway, and that will keep order. But I guess in my series, I'm not really talking about the practicality of instructions or the practicality of how it goes. It's more in the understanding and the psyche of what happens of the effects, basically, of being indoctrinated, and also of uh, following things for certain reasons. So usually when I do this, of course, there are exceptions and all that I probably will mention in the future, but it's more about the psyche. So it's like, for what reasons are we doing this? Is it really because of this or that? So if, for example, I mean, a celebrity could easily start a cult following if they chose to, if enough people like them, and it really does happen. I find it actually strange because when I go into, one example is interesting. When you go into YouTube comment sections, right? Especially when it comes to apologists, Christian apologists, and skeptic channels, right? So you could say the same thing on a Christian apologist channel, like the same statements, whatever, on a Christian apologist channel, and a whole lot of people will maybe agree with you if it has to do, if they want to agree with it. Say the same thing, and then a whole lot of people will like it and everything. You say the same thing in a skeptics channel, and a whole lot of people disagree. The thing is, but then it's also because the people are so willing, are so easy to kind of well, I'm trying to find a better way to say it, but basically it's also about what environment you're kind of in. Like sometimes people, just because it's a YouTuber, for some reason it kind of makes it seem like they really know what they're doing. They really, I mean, they wouldn't be talking about this, or they wouldn't be in a position with, let's say, 1 million subscribers or whatever, if they didn't have something going for them. And some of them have really terrible ideas. I mean, there are some YouTubers out there that people literally watch them because they're doing terrible things to themselves. So, but then for some reason, people will still find it, still have a cult following and will still defend them. So it's really weird how people think. But you're right. People don't always do things for the best reasons, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the Righteous Mind, the book I mentioned in my video, discusses exactly that phenomenon where it's actually very difficult to come to your own decisions. Like in terms of like doing research and even just the mental, the critical thinking, as we call it, it's easy to let someone else do it if you trust them. It's much easier that than to try and figure it out yourself, like a proper philosopher, and really like going down to first principles, figuring out what is true, definitely. What is right. And one way, just like you described, one way that people make decisions is to find someone they trust, a YouTuber who has maybe put a lot of effort into sounding authoritative, just literally their accent, the words they use, like the place they're sitting, just really basic things like that make it look like this person is on TV. Basically, it's like for people who grew up with TV, that makes it seem like they wouldn't let this person on TV if they didn't know what they're talking about. On YouTube, on YouTube, you can just look like you don't need anyone's permission.
And actually that's actually a good point. And actually, I was just about to give that example about the small things, like even accents. I mentioned it in another video that I would notice that sometimes it's really the small things in society that can change a whole lot of big things. I sometimes wonder if I had a different accent, for example, or if if I looked differently or whatever, how people would perceive the information that I'm actually giving to them. So I had a lecturer, I remember, a really intelligent guy. He was a soil science. It was in my soil science class, because I do crop sciences. And the guy was really intelligent. And I used to listen to him, but then I remember that my colleagues around me would always be kind of like making jokes about the way he pronounced certain words. And also because he had like really dark skin, I mentioned it in a recent video. So when people would look at that, and then especially when they would compare him to other teachers who spoke better and everything, it's almost as if because of their own ideas and their own preconceptions, they think that affects his intelligence or what he's saying. So if I came with I could be talking about very important stuff. And I noticed this especially with also Asians and stuff, but then Asians already have kind of a good thing going for them. People think that they're smart, so that's not really a thing. But a person with a very thick accent from a native country, from their native country that's not Western, for example, it happens a lot with them, that what they're saying, people don't look for those things. They don't care about. It's not that they don't care about the truth, but they're they're just automatically or more prone to deciphering whether this person is credible based on things that don't matter or that don't have anything to do with the information.
They look at the easiest things that there are to determine. And I think I wouldn't like to give too much credence to these these very basic, superficial judgments, but they are often learnt from experience. It's not necessarily that you're taught to respect a certain accent, but it's like you pick it up as you age. You hear certain people, and certain people are saying certain things, and you make these generalizations yourself often as you grow up, which doesn't make it. Stereotypes. They're not a very good way of making judgments.
They're terrible.
But if you don't have any other information, a stereotype can be better than nothing. And again, I'm only saying this because stereotypes bad is such a common belief. Like, obviously stereotypes are not a great way to make judgments. If you have other information about someone, if you can hear what they're saying, if they're saying something intelligent or unintelligent, whatever, judge them on what they're saying, what they're doing, obviously much better. But often,
no, of course, and
go on.
No, sorry, I was just going to say that, of course, like I was listening to a cop, right? I mean, you see, I'm not a cop and everything, so obviously he would have better experience than me. And he was like saying that, the thing is that it's not that he's racist or anything. And in fact, the guy was actually black. He was saying that he's not racist, but it's just that the amount of, in his experience at least, the amount of, for example, people would be of would fit a certain crowd, that description. So, for example, they would have that. And it's just, it's actually rational, I would say, to kind of have at least an eye more open for that, to kind of say that, because it's something that you can kind of expect to happen. But I did mention in a number of my series, not just one, but like two, that if it now becomes, you start to lose balance with that, and stereotype now becomes more important than the other factors and what the person actually does, then that's a real problem. And I think that's quite obvious. I mean, like, if a person is not suspected of anything, or is less likely to be suspected, they will have a greater, opportunity to do wrongdoing, because everybody's going to, even if people suspect them, even if I'm sure, even there are some people that even if they are caught on camera taking something, and then they're caught and questioned, hey, bring that back, people will literally believe them when they say, oh, sorry, I just forgot to pay. And it's like, people will literally go that far because it's so unlikely that they would be suspected of that. Which is actually funny, because I was speaking to a cashier just a few days ago, and she was telling me about, she was checking my bills because I paid her with cash, and she was checking my bills because, to see if they were counterfeit, which is something that they always have to do, right? And I was just curious, because since they always do it, I was asking her, have you ever caught someone with counterfeit bills? I mean, you guys always check this stuff, but have you ever? And she told me, yeah, no, I have. And I was like, really? And I was curious, and I was like, well, who was it? Was it like, I wanted to know what kind of person would do this. And she told me it was actually an old lady, like a really old lady with counterfeit bills. And I was like, that actually kind of makes sense, because that's like the least likely person that you would suspect of doing such a thing. So both sides, there always needs to be a balance. Stereotypes can help, especially like you said very well that, when you have no other information, at least it kind of gets your guard up, better to see a line when it's not there.
I guess so. Without getting into specifics, it's hard to. Anyway, it's going off topic anyway. I've just seen a drop in the viewers, and I believe it's because, I don't know if you follow Adam and Sitch. They stream every Sunday night at 9, which is something I often try not to stream against any of my I don't know what you call them, something like friends, people who I know whose streams I go on sometimes. I try not to stream against them. Adam and Sitch are in like a whole other stratosphere in terms of viewers. Like they're too big to associate with me. But anyway, I think we've lost a few who have gone over there. So thank you for everyone who stuck around. And if I've just reminded you, go if you want. It's okay. You can come back, watch
Yeah.
this later. Go and watch Adam and Sidge. It's quite a good show. I usually catch up on Mondays. But sorry, I forgot during your introduction to mention that you drew the thumbnail for this video, which is great because live streams are the times when I least want to make a thumbnail. So the fact that you just sent me one was extremely helpful.
Oh, I'm
Thank you
glad
very
for
much.
that. Yeah, no
Yeah,
problem. I'm very glad.
and as I said at the start of the stream, you're a great animator, and it's great to see. You put a remarkable amount of work into your videos. So once again, in case anyone missed it at the start, go ahead over to A Sola, and I know that some of my viewers have been over to you and left a lot of praise. A lot of people thanking me for sending me to your channel, and yeah. So if you're only just joining us and you're not on the Sitch and Adam show, then go ahead and check out A Sola's videos.
Yeah, thank you. I really do appreciate that because it's but I try to improve though. But yeah, I'm very grateful for people when they leave nice comments and stuff. It's funny enough, I haven't actually gotten bad comments, which is something I kind of expected from YouTube, having seen so many other people, just get nasty comments. But people have been very friendly, so I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know if you saw an interview I did a few years ago with James Damore, after quite heavily sort of documenting everything that happened with him. I actually got to interview him, and he said that on YouTube, every single comment on a video about him or videos with him have been positive. It's funny the way YouTube is very good at showing people things they want to see, things they want to watch, things they're interested in, and so you end up in a place where it's not like Twitter where you're putting your opinion out there for everyone to hate, where you get into these arguments. Like YouTube, it's kind of dangerous in this sort of echo chamber sense, but in terms of being a creator, it's very encouraging because your videos only get put in front of people who are interested and who are probably at least sympathetic to your point of view.
That's a good point.
But that definitely is off topic.
Yeah, but not entirely. Like echo chambers is, but yeah, I guess it's kind of hard. I actually fear the time that I'll start getting lots of viewers. That's when it's going to be like, if that ever happens, that's when it's going to be like the reality of it, because then it'll be viewers from all sorts of walks of life and people who make threats and say all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I guess that's just life, though. Funny enough, I told you, I think I mentioned that it's seeing people that can handle the stress that actually got me to wanting to get on it as well. But yeah, that's a bit off topic. Actually, I did have a question about something that you mentioned in the video as well.
Yeah, okay.
And it was on the well, you mentioned a number of things, but then one thing that was also interesting was I'm just trying to remember now. It was having to do with basically your thoughts on like when you mentioned like without when these ideas that we have and everything are things that we were kind of taught beforehand and everything, and it like I guess it comes from like sometimes Christian values and all that, and we should actually we subliminally have them because of that, but then we don't realize that, and it comes from following orders. But then, I was actually kind of just interested in that because I heard Jordan Peterson talking. Actually, it was the first thing that I ever heard from him talking about it. And yeah, I was like, that could be true. It's just I kind of disagreed a bit because I was like, in the all over the world, you don't just have people doing things out of religion. For example, we have a tribe. There's a tribe, an African tribe, where in them they're far from civilization, but then. For example, when somebody commits a bad act and everything, sometimes what they do, and he's part of the community, what they do is sometimes they put him in a circle and then they start telling him all the good stuff that he's done. And then it's all an emotional thing. And, trying to kind of get him to see that, he can be kind of better than this. And those people have no interaction with religion at all. Well, not any from the West and everything. So I think that sometimes morality is not centralized, like from... To like one particular.
Yeah, no, when I came to edit that video, I took out a lot of what I said about religion, and I kind of wish I had a chance to sort of make it again, or that I should have perhaps written a script. As I often do when I edit a video, I either have to record something and add it in afterwards because I realize I've missed something. In this case, I was kind of thinking of not uploading it at all, as I often do. But yeah, I think I got a little bit confused there, talking about authority in general and then talking about Christianity specifically. When really I just wanted to talk about the moral, like whether it's secular or religious. It happens to be religious in my country often, where the moral figures are Christian, or they are actually religious figures. They're vicars, bishops, priests, whatever. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to hear what you had to say directly to my point in that video, which is just sort of one point among many that we've managed to explore here. But the fact that, going back to the righteous mind, this motivated reasoning, the fact that if you're a fairly intelligent person and you want to do something immoral, you can usually talk yourself around to believing it's a moral thing to do. Or if you want to believe something bad, even, you know, you get these situations where, you're, tribalism, where, you can imagine blue team, red team, left versus right, whatever dichotomy you're on. You hear something bad about someone and you go like, I believe it. You don't have to see any evidence. It just sounds like something that horrible person would do, and you're just, you don't need any evidence. But if you hear something bad about someone you like, you go like, there's no way that's true. You start like Googling, like furiously, like, there's no way. I need photographic proof of this.
Yeah, I know, right? And then like there's not. Yeah, no, that is actually true. It was something that I also did mention about the cognitive biases that we have and cognitive dissonance. The former being, not hating the other people, and dissonance usually being that, well, it can't be true because I know this person, or I think that this person is really great. And well, and that's the thing. Everyone has a bias. And it's not always conscious. It's very often subliminal. Sometimes, I guess, not. I'm not going into the politics and stuff, but it's sometimes things that we don't realize. And I guess usually when I use the word, the term critical thinking, I was actually researching it just some time ago. I was looking at the part where they were trying to minimize the amount of biases that are that are natural to us as human beings, like what we just mentioned. Having experienced something over and over, or having a certain expectation of certain things, or people that you disagree with. It forms a bias, and you wouldn't really realize it until you do some introspection. And that's the thing about really being self-aware, I suppose, or self-critical, self-corrective as well, and self-everything, is that you actually manage to sit down for a while and actually realize, question these actual things, these things about why am I accepting or rejecting an idea or information? Like what you said about, if you hear something good about a friend and everything, it's perfectly possible that it could be true. But if if you're not a very self-aware person, you wouldn't be able to even go there to start questioning, to try to get to reality. And the thing is that people are not on that level. Not everybody is on the level of wanting to live that way. We live very normal lives.
I think some people aspire to be more self-aware, but I've constantly been, just through reading about psychology, it seems like it's impossible to actually truly be self-aware. What you're talking about, there's people who aspire to be self-aware, who are trying to counteract these biases, and then there are people who are just unaware of them. But these two groups, there's not actually a difference in how good these people are at being self-aware. It's just that one of them's trying and one of them's not. But
that's actually what I was actually just about to say. That even the people that claim to be in fact, the more you actually claim to be self-aware or whatever, it may be dangerous, because you may think that well, I know everything about myself that there is to know, when there's a lot of things that you actually don't know, and it's impossible to do that. Like, I'm I'm not saying we're solipsists or that there are things that we don't know, but we only know things to the best of our knowledge. Like our knowledge is limited, and actually you mentioned something just now that made me think of something else. It was on the on like oh, now it's just escaped my mind. I can't
It's
think of it,
gone.
but yeah. Well, maybe
I was
if you
going to
carry on
say,
talking.
yeah, I was going to just to continue on that point about self-awareness. The most
Yeah.
recent book I read, now what was it? I think it was Thinking Fast and Slow. Was talking about a visual illusion. So you think about one of those optical illusions where, for the example he used in the book was which line is longer. It's kind of,
Oh yeah.
it's not the same one that you were talking about in your video. It's a different,
Yeah.
it's a line. One of them's got, I'll draw it in the chat.
Oh yeah, one of them is closer, and I think one of them looks like it's further.
Yeah, and one of them looks like this. No, I typed the same thing twice, damn it.
Yeah. I've seen a whole lot of optical illusions with the whole.
Yeah. So
even the whole darker and.
Yeah, so one of them looks longer than the other, just based on what the arrow at the end is doing. And the fact is that you can train yourself to notice the optical illusion where you go, I've seen this before, I know. Or you can get a ruler out and check. But the thing is that you're never going to be able to train your eyes to stop seeing it. And that is what your brain is doing. Your brain is always falling for the trick. You can perhaps, you can notice it, like especially when other people are doing it. You can see like, oh, that person's falling for that again. But you'll actually always see it. You'll always see one line as longer. And that was all I was going to say. I don't know if your point came back.
No, but that is really actually quite true about how you don't know everything and then people and well, I think it was about the point that I was trying to remember was about when you were. It was such a good point that you made, but now I can't. I guess it had to do with. Oh yeah, it was about religion. There we go. So basically, it was just to say that I wanted to clarify something as well, because I remember that our conversation, in the in our discussion, our private conversation, was it kind of leans towards religion, but then I was kind of trying to show that it's not just religion to be the problem, and that's actually how I got to creating this indoctrination series in the first place. Because in your video you mentioned the whole secular and usually atheist position, kind of thinking that we have better ways of seeing things now and all that stuff. And in my view, right, the way I see religion, right, is that it's not a problem of it being, we need to get rid of it or anything, or that it has to do with it's always going to be a bad thing. What I kind of imagine about it is that it's just a very effective way of getting people to do things because without actually thinking for themselves. It's kind of like you will. Especially because of the rewards that you may gain or the consequences that you're fearing for it. So in Christianity especially, people can do all sorts of things. And it kind of ties in with your point about rationalizing things as an intellectual person, right? You kind of can. And you're so right about that, because for an intellectual person, they can come up with all sorts of reasons and even convince the entire world that what they did was, justified, I guess, or even moral. And then they do that in their own minds. But I don't think that it's there's a solution a clear guaranteed solution either way, because on the other side, if you do have people who are more emotionally attached, who are doing it for, I would say, faith or out of the religion and everything, they can also justify whatever they do, especially in Christianity. I mean, most of the Christians I know, I guess, are more like, it's kind of, Christianity is kind of like my hobby, basically. They're not really invested. Well, there are others who are very sincere. It's kind of like that. And they can kind of justify anything because of their own beliefs, that, well, God will forgive me if I just apologize, or if I, the blood of Jesus and all that stuff. So on both sides, there's really no one that is so self-aware, so intelligent, or so moral, or so good to be able to kind of say that they have the answer to all the problems or for every human being alive. But I guess with the indoctrination series is that it kind of at least gets us closer by kind of critically analyzing things. When I say critically analyzing, I mean like, asking questions, stepping back from any biases, possible biases, or uh, 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 and analyzing things in a position where we can be self-critical. In other words, we analyze positions where we could be wrong and so on. So I guess that's the thing. But I have nothing in particular against religion. I guess I'm not a very religious person myself, but yeah, it's just to say.
I think the only reason I brought up religion at all in that video is because for me this intellectual arrogance, as I call it in the video, this appeared at the same time as I started to become an atheist, because I started to become more what do you call it? I wasn't interested in listening to what the Bible had to say, what the people at church had to say about what I should do, because I felt that that as a human being with a working brain, that I should be able to figure this out by myself without needing religion. That was the link for me, and I think this is being someone who's followed the kind of atheist movement that happened, especially on YouTube over the last, what has it been, like 15 years almost?
I can't remember 10. I don't even know.
Before there was political YouTube, there was atheist YouTube, basically. Before like the whole feminism thing, that really got YouTube politics commentary kicked off. There was atheism. It was atheists against Christians, and I was absolutely in agreement with these atheists, thinking that Christians are so they're so weird and stupid and indoctrinated, thinking that you need to read the Bible to know what is right and wrong. That was all I was saying, is that for me, those two things are linked, where you reject authority by rejecting your religion that you were raised with often.
I think we actually have two very different backgrounds, because the way that you've explained it in I think another interview is that, when you were younger, you kind of had this freedom of, I guess, choosing religion or not choosing religion, or, and eventually when you were very young, you broke away from it. For me, I was very religious, or rather like a hardcore Christian, until my adulthood. So it was very different, because for me, I had all that time and it's a very interesting concept, because I've noticed anyway in my life that a lot of the people who grew up without religion, when they get to their adulthood, they start becoming a little more interested in finding out what all of it is about, and tend to convert to Christianity or to a religion when they grew up without one. While as the people who grew up with it usually are the ones who are the most outspoken about how, its flaws, and they break away from it when they get older. And but in my case, it was very different, because it was like I took it really seriously. I believed that, well, if God says so, He must know better, and it was against it as well with the whole the limited understanding of the human mind. Because for me, it was really like, we can't understand everything, so maybe there's a really good reason for someone who knows everything, because if He knows everything, then there could be that. But that's exactly my problem now. I cannot say that I believe that there's a guarantee for that. I cannot say that in an honest fashion. Even with the whole, with anything else, really. If I'm expected to kind of be in a position where anything that comes from this source, which I call in the series, I call the authority, anything that comes from them, I kind of have to be predisposed to accept as good or morally or true. That I find that, at least in some respects, a bit dangerous and detrimental, because because of the lack of the guarantee. It doesn't mean that the person isn't wiser, or the person doesn't know what they're doing, or that they're wrong. Actually, in many cases, they are right. But then the reasons as to why we accept or why we reject is, I guess, the problem I have with it.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up to an hour now on the chat. My throat's getting a little dry. So unless you have anything else huge to say, I'd just like to thank everyone who left a super chat. I do remember that Mr. Gently Benevolent, the what do you call it? The ever-present, omnipresent patron of the political YouTube that I inhabit, not just of this channel, but many channels who are friends of mine. Anyway, Gently Benevolent left some money for us right at the start of the show before we even started. So I'd like to thank him, and also like to thank Consul for that super chat. No questions attached, just good vibes. So we're doing something right. And did you have anything? Did you have anything more to add?
Can't think of anything now, but yeah,
What about your
I'll
latest?
probably put it in. I'll
If people
probably
want
put
to
it
check
in
out,
the future episodes of my series.
oh sure, great, yeah, definitely look out for those. If people want to watch your videos, should they start at the beginning of your latest series, or what would you think would be a good like starting video for people who want to check out your channel?
Oh yeah, that's actually a good question. I worked with this. My previous series, or the how I started my channel, was on a series on racism in South Africa. I live in South Africa, but I'm not South African. But I have a series on that. It may help because at least you may kind of if you want to know that, but it's not related to the indoctrination series, so you can start either one that interests you. But when it comes to any series that you choose, I would really recommend that you start from the first episode because it sometimes, in some cases, not all of them, but in some cases, they kind of follow on, and there are some things that you would need to understand from the previous episode to watch the one. So thanks for actually mentioning that. I also do, like you mentioned, animations. I'm working on my own animation series. Like it's a creative one, it has nothing to do with education. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And yeah, the series are not the entertainment one, the educational series. They are they're related, but they are sort of self-contained. Like each episode, they don't continue directly. But yeah, starting at the beginning, just for context, probably makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Yeah.
There's nothing there now. I haven't written a description for this stream, but I will put a link to, I guess, the start of your latest series in the description of the stream, so people who are watching back in the future, hello from the past.
I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put a link there. So
yeah,
I think that's everything.
I usually like to work with 8 parts. So right now I've uploaded the first 5 parts. There are 3 parts that are left, like 2 parts and then a conclusion. So I like to keep it that way. It's nice and short and try to put it. Fortunately, some episodes are longer than others, but that's how it is. So for those who have been watching, I know that I think I saw some people in the chat who have already been watching. There are 3 parts left because some people thought it was already finished. No, when the 3rd part comes, then yeah.
Yeah, that's good to know. Good insider knowledge.
Yeah.
So thank you again for joining us. Thank you for everyone watching. Thanks for everyone watching in the future. And go ahead and watch the Adam and Sitch stream. I believe they'll be going for the next 6 hours or something. So yeah, I hope you haven't missed too much. And thanks for watching, and have a good night, everybody.